Mine is.
Okay, it is 4:04. We are 4 minutes late. I'm going to call to order the June 21st meeting of the Independent Ethics Board of the City of Tallahassee. In the nature of full disclosure from the discussions on our pledge, I want to point out that since the last meeting, I have had two lengthy discussions, one with Ben Poitevin primarily concerning the pledge, and one with Barney Bishop generally concerning the nature, direction, and actions of the board to date. With that, we would go on to the minutes. Did anyone have any comments concerning the minutes from our May 17th meeting? Corrections,
you all have been provided with a corrected copy. There were some typos, et cetera, that have subsequently been corrected.
I'll give everybody a chance to page through to it. And I should have said, I guess, a quorum being present.
I move the minutes as presented.
Okay, Ms. Phillips has moved the minutes. Do I have a second?
Sure.
Mr. Friedman surely seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. And okay, the minutes are approved. Then we would go to the Ethics Officer Report, which is a couple of pages, and Julie's going to walk us through them a page at a time.
And I believe, Mr. Chair, there were copies of that in your meeting materials that cover, as per usual, the activities completed since our last meeting. You'll note on there I did attend budget workshops. Last night, I'll point out that I attended the alternative meeting that was held here in keeping with this board's commitment to hearing from the public and from hearing from all perspectives. So I did attend that, which was educational to hear what the public's concerns are, and those will get passed on. Also, I've been working to further publicize the campaign contribution refund program. You should have in your materials a very nice letter I received from the League of Women Voters thanking me for that presentation, and they were a very engaged group, and I very much appreciated the opportunity to speak with them and continue to publicize that program. We have now received, I have 2 more applications for a refund in my office, so that'll bring the total to 9. The League of Women Voters was kind enough to offer to do a mailing to folks that may be qualified for refunds, enclosing a form to them and saying, hey, you've made a donation, here's this form, here's the program that's available to you, and we'll see if that enhances participation in that program. And that completes my report, unless there are questions.
I have a question, Ms. Meadows-Keefe. I noticed you did some training for student interns. I was wondering, I did a look on Amazon recently and found that you can find ethics in anything, ethics in powerlifting,
Yes.
ethics in accounting, things places you'd expect it to be and not expect it to be, since it's a common topic in school. Do you find a different attitude or approach from the younger folks you talk to as opposed to us old guys?
Well, I think people are becoming accustomed to ethics being present in everything. So you're correct. There's ethics in use of social media, right? And the young people are very conscious about that. There's ethics in actually academia and being honest and straightforward in your testing, not cheating on tests. So what we were trying to get across to the student interns, and I think it's called Future Leaders Academy is what it's called, They got the normal city ethics training in an abbreviated form, and I came kind of on the back side of that and reminded them of their obligations and that they are representing the city of Tallahassee in their actions during their time here. And they're just a group of local students who've been identified for leadership potential that come here for part of the summer and participate in various aspects of city government. So we just went through things like appropriate use of city materials, city time, and their conduct, just in general, while they're here.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of Ms. Meadows-Keefe concerning her monthly report? And I assume there are no changes related to the budget?
No.
Okay. Next, we have a presentation by Mr. Wayne Tedder, Assistant City Manager. Sir, you have the floor, the podium, the microphone, anything else here you want, because it all belongs to the city.
And while he's booting up his presentation, I will just briefly introduce him, and this is Mr. Wayne Tedder. He's known to some of you. He has been with Tallahassee since 1997, started in the Tallahassee-Leon County Planning Department. He became department director in 2004. In 2001, June, Wayne was appointed as the director of a new City of Tallahassee-Leon County department called Planning, Land Management, and Community Enhancement, which is an acronym that, when placed together, is PLACE. So you hear talked about all the time a sense of place and wanting to give Tallahassee a cohesive sense of place. Part of that is due to Wayne, which included Blueprint 2000 and Tallahassee-Leon County Planning Department. Both agencies are jointly administered by the city and county. Although Wayne worked for both the city and county for 18 and a half years. So imagine that. He's balancing all of those interests. He's transitioned to the city of Tallahassee as the Assistant City Management, this is a mouthful of a title, the Assistant City Manager of Development Services and Economic Vitality in January of this year. So he is going to share with you what his new role entails and how we're becoming more economically vital in Tallahassee. Wayne, thank you so much.
Thank you all for having me here today. Let me just kind of go through and I want to hit some highlights. I think you all will have a copy of the PowerPoint available so you can kind of see some of the details, and always feel free to contact me afterwards if you would like some more information on the specifics of what I go into. So at the high level, there are 8 different departments that I am overseeing at this point. Actually, only 2 of those departments are city only. The rest of those have various interactions with Leon County as well as other governments throughout the region. For instance, Capital Regional Transportation Planning Agency, that's our transportation planning agency, has included in it Wakulla County, Gadsden County, and Jefferson County representatives. So it's a board that, multifunctional board, multi-jurisdictional, excuse me. The Community Redevelopment Agency, although that's a city redevelopment agency, we have 4 county commissioners who sit on that board with 5 of the city commissioners. The Growth Management Department and the City Real Estate Department, those are city-only divisions, and we'll get into the details on those in just a few minutes. Place, where I just came from, includes really one more than what you see here: Planning, Blueprint, and the Office of Economic Vitality. Just recently, the city and county is also consolidating their MBWE sections from both the city of Tallahassee and Leon County into one joint agency. So we are, I think, within the last 3 weeks, pulled the staff together, and we're in the process of doing some major work with those departments and consolidate those efforts. Our community has a broad range of interest. We have, I think, a very diverse community. We deal with things for the agencies that I work within. Transportation, walking and cycling, believe it or not, has been one of the major issues I've had to deal with. It's interesting how vulnerable those things can be, very explosive, if you will. Environment's always been a top issue for our community. Picture you see in the top right is Lake Jackson looking across to the state capitol. A tremendous asset for our community. Trees, we love our trees in Tallahassee. We talk about jobs and education of our children, the safety of our children. We also talk about having viable neighborhoods for our community, and what does that mean? And impacts of development that is being proposed adjacent to those viable neighborhoods. And again, just kind of going back to the diversity of our community, having all of those folks sometimes interact in a single project is not uncommon for us to deal with. So kind of, I think when Reese Goad was here last month, he talked about his job was to make his customers happy. And the opportunities I have as part of the divisions I serve with, a lot of times it's conflict. It's conflicts between different groups. It's conflict between neighborhoods. It's conflicts between neighborhoods. It's conflicts between realtors, builders, all of those folks who have interest in our communities, and there's not a single direction that everyone is pulling. So there's that opportunity for us to create solutions when we have conflicts. That's how I look at it. And then a lot of times, kind of going back to the sidewalks and the bike routes, things like that, you would think it would be a simple solution or a simple issue in our community, but sometimes it's like putting something on the plate that's going to be very explosive for our commissioners to deal with in the future. So what I look at from my perspective, my role as Assistant City Manager of the 8 departments is twofold. One, from a policy perspective. You have to take all of those issues that you see in the community with all the projects that you're working on, and then you have to balance that with what is practical and real solid planning principles to resolve those issues. The second role is merely from a regulatory process. We are given rules and regulations by our city commission, whether it's a land development regulation, whether it's comp plan policies, things of that nature, even internal policies. It is our job as staff to implement those policies to the full extent of the law. Kind of dive into some of the, I'll hit the highlights for the departments we work with. Capital Regional Transportation Planning Agency, CRTPA. It's a multi-jurisdictional planning agency. It includes Gadsden, as I mentioned to you before, Gadsden County, Jefferson, Leon, and Wakulla counties. One of the things I want to point out in this agency is if a roadway project that is on a state roadway system or federal system, so you're talking about I-10, US 90, Appalachia Parkway, if improvements to those roads are not in our 2040 Regional Mobility Plan, then we have no opportunity to receive funding from the state and federal agencies. So that's what the value of this agency is, to make sure that we have the proper planning in place to receive funding from federal and state agencies. Kind of going to some of the projects, the first half of those projects that are in the black print, those are our local projects. And you can see we also have pretty significant projects that our city commission has to be involved with that are outside of Tallahassee. So those last 5 are pretty substantial projects. Going into the Community Redevelopment Agency, all tax increment that is generated in the district must be reinvested in that same district area. And we have 2 of those boundaries. We have the downtown redevelopment area, and we have the Frenchtown South Side redevelopment area. Really, the CRA is to encourage blighted areas to kind of lift up, rebirth themselves, and have create areas that are run down, for lack of a better term. That is a term that is used, blighted, in the state statutes, and to lift those areas up and make them viable components to our community. So we do have several areas, even outside of those redevelopment areas, but the dollars from the CRA can only be invested in those 2 districts. Some of the things that I want to focus in for the CRA is the Business Facility Improvement Program. It's the second major bullet there. It's not just for big developments. We've had a number of examples where small businesses, struggling businesses, we've had them, Gain Street, South Monroe, South Adams Street, have come in and asked for assistance to lift their buildings up. So a lot of times you'd see buildings that are kind of falling apart. We offer a $50,000 grant opportunity where the first $10,000 is not necessary to match by the applicant, but the remaining $40,000 has to be matched by the developer. So what we're trying to do is encourage people to take those dilapidated buildings or buildings that kind of could be lifted up into those areas and make them viable components in our community.
Mr.
Viable
Tedder,
structures.
is that a one-to-one match?
The 40, yes.
41-to-1? Okay.
Yes. Growth management, I've come to appreciate the growth management department tremendously. From a planning perspective, we like to plan cool things for our community, but when you get down to it, you have to implement it through the land development regulations, which is sometimes very difficult. Currently, we're processing about 50 site plans a year, 10 subdivisions, and 120 environmental permit applications per year. I can tell you without any hesitation, back before the recession of 2008, we were processing probably around 400 development applications each year. So you can see the trend has been significantly reduced over time, but now that we're seeing a lot of development activity pop back into the to our views. So building inspection, again, right now we're reviewing about 301 and 2 family bedroom residential units per year and 500 multifamily units per year. Compare that to about 2,500 during the more extreme times of our community. We've had a number of years where we were permitting 2,500 homes per year, which was substantial growth for our community. Some of the most difficult issues that we deal with is code enforcement. This is where we actually go out and cite buildings to being unkept, yards not being mowed throughout the community. You would think it wouldn't happen that often in our community. It looks like we take great deal of care of our community, but we have almost 600 dangerous building and housing code violations any given point in time, and approximately 4,000 nuisance cases, which includes lot mowing, junk in the yards, inoperable vehicles. Our goal, though, even though we take a lot of these to code enforcement actions, our goal is not to collect fines or lien the properties. Our goal is to bring them into compliance. We are working on some strategies to try to work through those things, but we really want our community to take care of itself and not us have to go in and police the community to do that. Lastly, I thought this was a pretty interesting number. Through the administration of the Growth Management Department, between 4,500 and 5,000 public records requests per year. Now, a lot of that is developers simply trying to get information from previous permits to help them get through another round of permits, but I thought that was a pretty staggering number for the Growth Management Department of all departments to have those kinds of records requests. Real estate management, this is fairly new to my area. First time I'm having an opportunity to work with that department. They're pretty much in charge of maintaining all the lands that the city of Tallahassee has purchased through various reasons. We also administer the parking program, the city public parking program. There's about 1,700 public parking spaces that we have in both on-street parking that are metered as well as public deck facilities. Garage, and they also deal with a lot of leases that are necessary for utility easements, things like that. So there's a lot of things that we tie in that we just don't own, but we also have leases too.
May I ask a question, please?
Yes, sir.
Does that include the Tallahassee Airport?
Tallahassee Airport is pretty much owned and maintained entirely by the airport department.
Thank you.
Okay, so some of the other things that we deal with in the real estate division, for any project that needs, let's say we need a sewer line to locate for a new development. We're trying to extend sewer into parts of our community or trying to provide water service. If property is necessary for that infrastructure project, this department will go in and help those departments acquire those needed properties. Lastly, cemeteries of all things are underneath me. I'll tell you some of the strangest things I've had to deal with. Can you imagine? We've even found someone who was buried in the wrong plot and what kind of issues that creates. So that is something that is new to me, and having to deal with those issues. Dogs running through parks, through the cemeteries have been other major issues that you would think would not be issues for us to deal with, but it's taken a substantial amount of our time to try to deal with those for our community. Place, as I indicated to you before, includes really 4 departments. You see 3 up there: the Planning Department, Blueprint 2000, and the Economic Vitality Departments, as well as the MWBE division that was just recently created. The Planning Department, which is the one where I originated from my public service experience, is the most comfortable for me. These are long-term planning functions for our community. And again, their job is to administer the comprehensive plan. It is their job to bring solid recommendations to the City Commission as well as the County Commission regarding how we grow in parts of our community when certainly requests are being made from different segments of our community. Something new that we've added to our department is design works. If you notice, a lot of the new development that you see along Gain Street has a different look and feel than other parts of our community. It's because we really care about the character that is located in these urban areas. So we have a division that is focused specifically on helping the development community establish a character that fits in with the community and lifts up those areas, and do it in a way that it's more of assistance rather than a mandatory perspective. We also are in charge of any land use changes that are made to the official zoning atlas. So the Planning Department is responsible for that zoning atlas. And then lastly, we have a number of folks who want to come to Tallahassee who need some data, demographic information. We have that ability to provide just about anything you could ever imagine you could need for demographics for our community. Blueprint 2000, which should be really now Blueprint. Blueprint is in charge with administering the 1-cent sales tax that was approved by 60% of our voters in 2000. It is a 1-cent sales tax. It expires in December of 2019. However, 2 years ago, the voters, 65% of the voters, which was more than the previous time, decided we'd re-up that 1-cent sales tax for another 20 years to address a number of significant infrastructure projects in our community. I believe there are 28 new projects under the new sales tax program, and something that's different with this new sales tax program that's unlike the previous or the current one is that there's an economic development component to the sales tax. Completed projects, we're very proud of the projects that Blueprint has participated on. Some of these projects are state projects, some of them are county projects, some of them are both city and county projects. And Blueprint has a big fundamental policy of making sure that the community is involved with every step and every aspect of the design. I can tell you one project in particular on that top set of projects, Franklin Boulevard, was out to bid when the community said, you know what, we think we could do this project a little different. Our city and county commissioners stopped, they listened to the community, the citizens, and what you see today is a direct result of citizen involvement in how the city and county commission listened to the changes that were desired from the community. We have some major projects that are going on right now. Magnolia Drive, there's a mixed-use trail that will actually connect all the way from Appalachia Parkway to South Adams Street. Blueprint is funding that. Leon County is actually a county roadway inside the city, so the county is maintaining the design contract and the construction contract for that project. The connector bridge over South Monroe Street that you see under construction, that is a Blueprint project as well. And then, of course, FAMU Way, the roadway is kind of how some of the complexities work. The roadway is a City of Tallahassee project. The trail and the stormwater component is a Blueprint project. So they had to marry that project and move forward as a team to make that a successful project. And then lastly, going into the Office of Economic Vitality, as I indicated to you before, the 2020 sales tax extension will create the need for us to determine how we will spend the economic development dollars, which is $97 million estimated over the 20-year period. One of the major things that they are undergoing at this point is developing an economic development plan. It's something our community has never had. And if you could go back and listen to the presentation of the Blueprint IE meeting from yesterday, I'd encourage you to do that. We have a consultant on board who talks about the struggles of developing that plan for our community and how, hopefully in September, when he brings back a recommendation to our commission, hopefully it will set a guideline and a template for how we spend the dollars in the future. So with that, that's kind of what we do in a nutshell, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Does anybody have any further questions for Mr. Tedder? We had a couple during the presentation. Mr. Tedder, I'd like to personally, I think probably speaking for the board also, thank you and the other folks from the city who've come and presented to us. I noticed we got some people in the back, so maybe you'll carry the message back. But we can't do our job if we don't understand the lay of the land, and without you guys helping educate us. I've lived here a long time, and I didn't know 90% of this stuff, and I'm sure even after the presentation, now I know about 1/10 more than I knew. But it helps us a lot in conceptualizing how we're going to do what we need to do, and it's very much appreciated.
Thank you very much. We certainly enjoy doing it.
The next item on our agenda, we're calling an ethics moment. Julie is going to go over for us a couple of recent opinions from the State Ethics Commission that relate to us as a board.
And these were included in your materials, but I've included one that's going to be a surprise to the chair because I just found it, sorry. But it's a little more interesting that, when we think about people taking bribes and corruption and conflicts of interest, we think about kind of high-level people. At the Department of Health, there was somebody that was getting allegedly bribed to facilitate sewer and water permits down in southwest Florida in a rural but affluent area of Broward County.
Is that effluent or affluent?
And, well, right, I know, I was thinking to myself, that's an interesting choice of words, but those permits can get backlogged, just like your septic system, I guess. And there was a gentleman who said that he would facilitate a developer's permit if he was given $500 extra. For that, this gentleman could face a maximum of 20 years imprisonment and $250,000 in fines. And I always say with my tongue in my cheek that if you're going to do that, you should be trying to get more than $500. And he's been released on $100,000 bail. And of course, his lawyer says that he's innocent. So that's one you can kind of follow for fun. Before I get to kind of a more serious topic, I wanted to let you all be exposed to how the Florida Commission on Ethics analyzes questions related to conflicts of interest through its advisory opinion function. So recently, this year, they have received 2 requests related to individuals who are participating on advisory boards. The city has numerous advisory boards, as does the county. Mr. Tedder didn't touch on this, but for the CRAs for downtown and for the south side, there are citizen advisory councils. These are comprised of business owners and citizens who live in the impacted areas that come with recommendations that go to the CRAs in those areas, so they do get grassroots citizen involvement. So if you're serving on one of these advisory boards, as we've know from our training, the rules of ethics apply to you. So here we have 2 questions that were posed. One is from Sarasota County, and this person was serving basically on an advisory board about parks and recreation. And this gentleman obviously had some business interests in parks and recreation through canoes and kayaks and windsurfing businesses, et cetera. And he wanted to know what services he could potentially offer to summer park programs, and wanted to do the right thing. So he did the right thing by asking for an advisory opinion, and we always suggest to people, and we know that we have the authority to issue advisory opinions, that before you act, you get the advisory opinion first before you proceed. So this person is to be commended. And the Ethics Commission basically told this gentleman that he had inherent conflicts of interest in each of the scenarios presented. And if anybody's curious in the audience, it's the March 9th, 2016 opinion, CEO 16-2. So in the course and scope of basically telling this gentleman what the limits were, and that he probably could not participate because his participation tempts dishonor, which is one of the things that the statute talks about. They also talked about how you can basically use the exceptions present in the ethics code. So there are certain situations where you can participate, and I'm going to talk through those in a moment. The second opinion is basically the same, that you had a county advisory board appointee that was working with EMS services, and that individual wanted to enter into a consulting relationship with EMS authorities while serving on the advisory council. And again, the Ethics Commission, as it was asked, said really you've got inherent conflicts in participation in a lot of these decisions. However, there is an exemption present that you may be able to avail yourself of. So you can see in those opinions how the Ethics Commission goes about evaluating questions, and I'm going to just quickly cite to the exceptions that they talk about. So as they're shooting down the various scenarios where these people could participate, they're saying, well, you might be able to participate if you fall under one of these exemptions. And these are enumerated in section 112, 313, paren 12 Florida statutes. So it carves out some exemptions where you can waive the conflict, and you have to first of all get a vote of 2/3 of the body to waive the conflict, and there has to be a public hearing. And then there are some other scenarios, including you bid on a project under a sealed bidding process. Alternatively, if they're rotating awarding contracts among different businesses, you may be able to participate in that. If you are a sole source of a certain product or service, you may be able to participate. And so they do have about 10 different exemptions that the person might pursue. So the reason I included these is because I wanted you all to see the process by which the Ethics Commission answers these questions and says no, but then says if you can fit into one of these exemptions, you could probably participate. And this kind of goes to that inherent conflict of the advisory boards where you want people with subject matter expertise sitting on the advisory boards, and they may or may not be engaged in businesses that may want to do business with the city or the county or whatever authority they're working with, and the challenges that that poses for board members and the public as well, and for people trying to do business and serve on boards. So those are the ethics moment teachings for this month.
Let me segue off the, I don't know if you can segue off an agenda for a moment. Mr. Ojitayo at the last meeting suggested that we do a workshop on the ethics pledge, and the plan at this point is to schedule that for our next meeting. And that'll primarily be a discussion among, we'll do it in public, but it's primarily going to be a discussion among us to see if we can get comfortable and land someplace. But I think these point out exactly the kind of thing that Mr. Poitevint's trying to get to. While it seems to me, personal opinion, for advisory bodies broadly, it makes sense for them to have ways to get around the fact that people work in an area and may also serve on an advisory board. Our body, our board, is a little bit different, and I think that's probably a big reason for the push for a pledge, is that we're not a typical advisory body. So kind of keep these in mind as examples of maybe things that opportunities that we as a board, as members of a board, might want to not take the opportunity to use in the future. Just something for next meeting. The next item on the agenda, and I'm going to note also that at 5 o'clock, wherever we are going to pause on whatever agenda item we're on, and we're going to go into a closed session to deal with our complaint that we're going to handle this
To
month.
talk about, so.
So, and we will need a few minutes before that to go over in public the process that we're going to use. We're not going to talk about the process in the closed meeting, but I want to make sure that we are on record before we go away into a closed meeting, that we are very clear about what the process is and why. So the next item on the agenda is the city's new non-discrimination policy.
And, Mr. Chair, this is only on the agenda for basically the board's information. Through our bylaws, it states that if the Independent Ethics Office receives a complaint related to discrimination, that is something that is referred to the Human Resources and Workforce Development Division. So there was recently a change to the administrative policy on non-discrimination, and it basically prohibits discrimination against recipients of and/or participants in the City of Tallahassee's programs, services, and activities based on race, color, national origin, sex, religion, age, disability, marital or family status, sexual orientation, gender identity, or any other characteristic. And I've attached for your reference
Any
the
other
new
characteristic
policy.
prohibited by law?
Correct. So that's just for your information.
But this is a new policy that was just adopted 2 months ago, I believe.
Correct, and it's here for you, just for your information, because potentially when calls are received, this is how they're handled. So I wanted the board to be familiar with this process.
Right, so this is something that could conceivably go both to the city office that deals with non-discrimination and to us, because it could conceivably be a violation of the city ethics code. The next, and I think our timing is working out perfect here. Julie is going to go quickly through the process for the executive session and what procedurally, not substantively, but procedurally, what we're going to be doing when we leave this room.
Yes, and at 5:00 p.m. today, the Independent Ethics Board will adjourn its public meeting to go into executive session to consider a pending complaint and whether this complaint is legally sufficient. The standard the board will apply in making this determination is whether the allegations of the complaint, if proven true, constitute a violation of the city's ethics code. Pending the board's consideration of the legal sufficiency of the complaint, the board will reconvene the public meeting to consider the remainder of the agenda. The closed executive session meeting was publicly noticed in conjunction with notice of today's public meeting. The executive session meeting is being held pursuant to Florida Statute 112.324, paren 2. At the conclusion of this session, if the matter is closed by the board, the transcript of the session and documents associated with the matter will become public. However, if at the end of the session the board instructs the ethics officer to do further investigation and to make a subsequent recommendation whether probable cause exists, the transcript of the session and documents associated with this matter will remain confidential and exempt until a probable cause determination is made. The purpose of the session, again, is to consider the matter and vote on whether to accept the ethics officer recommendation or to take alternative actions. The board did have a session like this several months before. I want to take one moment to explain that the documents and full transcript of that session are a matter of public record and did become a matter of public record immediately upon the adjournment of that session. So I've heard some discussion in the public that people are under the impression that that is secret. The things that were said in that meeting are somehow cloaked in secrecy, and I'd like to say that nothing can be further from the truth, that those documents are public. They were handed to a news reporter outside the room, and the transcript is available to the public to review if they are interested. So again, if the board closes the complaint, that same thing will happen. If it decides it wants a probable cause determination, the documents will remain confidential until probable cause is determined. But I again want to remind the public that this confidential exempt status does not last forever, that as soon as a determination is made about probable cause or about whether to continue, the documents become public.
Julie, when you talk about a transcript, you are not talking about something like our minutes, which are a summary. We actually are going to have a court reporter in the room who will be recording word for word what we say. So it's unlike minutes where a comment could be made and could not appear in the minutes. Whatever we say is going to be on the public record. So in all fairness, I would encourage everyone to be polite and be kind, but also be, firm, be, what you need to be, say what you need to say, but remember that everything is public record.
It's a verbatim transcript, Mr.
you.
Chair, so.
That's it?
That's it.
For you? Next on our agenda is public comment on agenda items. So if anybody has any comments they would like to make, we are happy to hear from you now. Obviously, we'll have another opportunity for comment on anything, even if it's not on the agenda, a little later in the meeting.
Cards in the box.
Jerry, would you look in the box down there and see if there are any cards? I had not seen any when I looked right before the meeting. No? Okay. Seeing none. We have, what do we have? 15 minutes. Mr. Currington, if you would, you did a legal opinion a couple weeks ago. Would you like to go over the origin of that opinion and then what the opinion says, please, for us?
Well, I guess the origin is that the question of whether this board, I'm sorry. The origin is that this board, at a number of its public meetings, has been encouraged to adopt a pledge that it goes above and beyond the state ethics code, possibly above and beyond the city's ethics code, and suggested that we should lead by example, I think. So then a number of the board members have asked whether or not such a pledge could be required, and so that's the nature of this opinion. I have phrased it as the following: whether the city's ethics board may require city's ethics board members to take a pledge which raises their ethics bar above the state's ethics code and above the city's ethics code. The quick answer is no, this board cannot. I do believe the city could, or the citizens could, by either amendment of the charter or further amendment of the ordinance. But as currently written, I do not believe this board has the authority. On the other hand, I think there's nothing that would prohibit individual members of voluntarily adopting such a pledge. If they did adopt such a pledge, it would stand on its own weight. It would have its moral weight, but no legally binding weight. So that's it in sum. Again, I come to that conclusion because of the charter amendment. It talks about the qualifications of board members before they can be appointed. And there are basically 3 requirements to be on the board. You must, 1, be registered City of Tallahassee elector. You must have appropriate subject matter expertise and not be an officer or employee of the local government. I will say in my research, I was a little surprised. There's a dearth of case law defining what a qualification for office is. I think many of us probably in the public debate have heard, for example, that the states cannot add to the qualifications for service in the U.S. Congress. You have to be 32 years old and a natural-born citizen, whatever that means. But states cannot add to the credentials. You would have to amend the U.S. Constitution if you wanted to add credentials or qualifications. I think likewise, this city charter is sort of our Constitution, and if we want to change it, we need to do it by amendment to add qualifications. Given the lack of case authority, and I had a law clerk go back and spend a number of hours because I was surprised by the answer, we turned to Black's Law Dictionary. And basically, a qualification, as you would think from a common sense perspective, is it's something you must have to be eligible to serve. So in my view, this pledge, it cannot be required in order for you to be eligible to serve. So I think it would constitute a qualification. But again, either the citizens by another charter amendment or the city commission by a board vote could amend either the ordinance or the city charter.
Okay. Any comments or questions of Mr. Currington? Mr. Friedman.
So just to get this right, if we decided we wanted a pledge, we could then send it to the city commission and ask them to pass it?
Well, I do think under the charter, you can make recommendations to the city commission. So if you, for example, wanted a mandatory pledge, you could recommend it to the city commission.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ochitayo.
Should the city then pass an ordinance, hypothetically, would that conflict with the charter insofar as the charter lays out the qualifications, or at least doesn't restrict qualification of board members? And then if an ordinance purports to lay out qualifications, i.e., you must, sign this pledge, does that in any way conflict with the city charter?
I don't know if I saw Lou back there earlier. I actually have not looked at that question. My understanding is that the city commission can also amend the charter. It would require a charter amendment, just like the constitutional amendment. I believe the city commission has the ability to amend the charter, but if I can get some help.
Cassandra Jackson is back there, and she's the deputy city attorney.
So whatever action, if we send it to the city commission, it wouldn't be for them to pass an ordinance, it would be for them to amend the charter.
Correct. I may have misspoken earlier, yeah.
Well, and I want to throw in one thing here on this, because it's just something I've been pondering for a while. Mandatory and permissive, I'm not sure that permissive isn't the stronger place to be. If I voluntarily say, I'm willing to do this, not because I want to serve on, because I had to do it because I wanted to serve on the board, but once I got appointed to the board, I'm willing to take this extraordinary step. That may be a stronger statement than I had to do it. If I choose to drive at a safe speed, rather than choosing to drive the speed limit so I don't get a ticket, I wonder which one of those is not ethically, but morally the superior position. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Cassandra Jackson, Deputy City Attorney. The City Commission does have the authority to amend the charter. There are certain things it cannot do. If the If a referendum has been passed by the people, the electors, then it cannot change that particular provision. And there are also certain enumerated things in the statutes that the city commission could not change in the charter, like the form of government. That will require a referendum. But generally speaking, because of its home rule powers, it can amend the charter.
Cassandra, can I ask a question? By that, do you mean, I understand that the city commission cannot contradict the citizens' amendment, but could it add to?
Certainly.
So, for example, there are 3 requirements. Could the city commission add a 4th requirement that doesn't contradict the first 3?
That is correct. It could do that.
Could it
Well-
reduce the requirements to 2?
Not without a referendum.
Okay.
Well, but Mr. Currington, I would question if adding a 4th one, if the 4th requirement was you have the 4 appointing authorities, and after each member, well, actually 5, because the board appoints two of its own members. After each appointment, the appointment must be confirmed by the city commission. I would think that you could consider that simply an addition, but it also, in my mind, would be a huge contravention of what the voters passed. So I think it could be hard to distinguish the board's authority there.
Right.
Where you've got the 3 enumerated that the voters passed.
Would seem to, I kind of understand where he's coming from. It would seem to me a contravention if I say that if, as the voters, they've said there are 3 requirements to be a board member, but then the commission purports to add a 4th one, that means the board is saying, no, it's not 3 requirements, it is 4 requirements. Is that not then, in an indirect way, a contravention of the will of the people? I'm trying not to reach here, but if you move from it's no longer 3, it's 4. By adding on to it, you're saying that, anyway, yeah.
Or another example might be if the city commission said, we want to make sure that members of the ethics board are knowledgeable, so we want to add a requirement that every member of the ethics board must have served on at least 2 city advisory boards before being appointed to the ethics board, because that means they'll have some knowledge and expertise concerning at least specific operations of the city. That's wouldn't be, in my mind, unreasonable, but I'm not sure that it's not in conflict. So
I don't know that it's a black and white answer. I will tell you, we've got 6 or 7 lawyers here at the podium and in the audience. I would say this, the same argument could be made, whether it contradicts or not, I think is a gray area. You could argue that adding another requirement to run for Congress is a contradiction to the natural-born citizen in age 32. But the cases have clearly said the states, you can amend the Constitution to change the pre-qualifications for Congress. So that argument could be used, but I think by implication, that case authority would probably argue, I don't think they could cut it back to 2. I think that would clearly be contradictory. But
And to add to what he just...
I would agree that this is just the stuff that lawsuits are made of.
I would add, if you're going to do comparisons with, U.S. constitutional amendments, they can be done both by the voters and by Congress.
Well, by the states and by Congress.
By the states.
Yes. Which they never have, but someday maybe. Someday maybe.
Amendment? But we have had constitutional amendments. What do you mean?
In the state.
It's how they were approved is the question.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Approaching 5 o'clock, we are going to break now. This is perfect. We will come back on public comment on non-agenda items. That's the item of business that we will return to. We do not know how long this will take. It will depend on how long-winded probably Mr. Friedman, Mr. Ojitayo, and I are in the meeting. So we will see everyone shortly. And with that, we are, recessed.
Bang that.
Have we gone to that real?
ever go to any of these festivals and sell them like as fairs?
Okay, so
So we'll just have to wait on that other thing.
It is 6:48 PM on June 21st. The Independent Ethics Board of the City of Tallahassee is reconvening after its meeting on complaint number 2016-0061. In our meeting, we determined to close the complaint with a finding of no legal sufficiency. However, based on some of the allegations contained in the complaint, it was the unanimous feeling of the board that we need to do further fact-finding concerning some of the retirement matters in the city of Tallahassee. We believe there are concerns that were raised, have been raised, that are within the jurisdiction of the board, and we are going to, in this public portion of the meeting, direct the ethics officer to do two things before our next meeting. One is to make the appropriate referrals to city officials or employees to do whatever follow-up or investigation is necessary, and to herself conduct further research and investigation, and to come back to us with a variety of documents that I know a number of us have specific things we would like to see, and we will each communicate to her those things that we would like to have her provide to us before our next meeting. I do not know that this is an issue that we will be able to resolve at the next meeting, but I believe that it is one over which we will maintain jurisdiction until at least a majority of the members of the board are satisfied that there are no further concerns within the jurisdiction of the Ethics Board. And with that, does anyone have any additions, comments, questions concerning the meeting we just left? Okay. That would put us back on our agenda on item 11, public comment on non-agenda items. It appears we have none. We had, we had a due process, a bylaw, recommendations from the Procedural Due Process Committee that we need to resolve.
what tab is that?
It's agenda item 10. I'm sorry, I skipped over it. I went straight to 11.
Yeah, board members, and we're going to finish our agenda, which is really great. As you recall, this wonderful chair established committees of one. I'm not trying to garner points or anything with him. To look at various issues on the board. One was procedural and due process issues, and we came to several points of agreement, Board Member Davis and I, through our meetings that have been discussed in prior meetings of this board. The request of me at the prior meeting was to come back with specific recommendations that the board could vote on for me to accomplish to facilitate our recommendations. One is to add to bylaws in Article 10, Paren A, hearing procedures as follows, that public hearings before the board shall be conducted as provided below, and as the board recalls, we have our own hearing process. I would simply add the language, unless the board opts to send the matter to the Division of Administrative Hearings. So that gives the board two options. The board can do it itself, or the board can decide to refer the matter to DOA. So by adding that language, that gives the board that authority. So I'd like to draft a bylaw for the board's review.
Okay, we're going to do these one at a time.
Yes, sir.
Now, as we vote on these, this does not finish the issue. This would come back at our next meeting.
As a bylaw.
Okay, so I'm going to do this motion in a second. Everybody in favor of directing Julie?
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Could I make one
Davis.
comment?
Certainly. I'm
Could
sorry.
I just recommend that we consider spelling out DOAH? Is that-
We will.
Okay.
And Ms. Phillips, I apologize.
That's my, I'm fine.
Okay. All those in favor of directing Julie to do that and bring it back to our next meeting for final action, say yay.
Yay.
All opposed, like sign. Okay, Julie, you are so directed. Item 2.
Item 2 was to consider adding a bylaw provision establishing a probable cause panel to hear complaints. Those members serving on the panel would not be permitted to participate in the final hearing or penalty phase of the complaint. So that was a recommendation. I know the board had some robust discussions on it. So I don't know if we'd be ready to do a draft bylaw, but I'd like to get some direction on that for our next meeting.
Can we just
This-
table it since we have so much on the agenda for next meeting, or do we need to do it now?
No.
How about if we just ask Julie to go ahead and put some language together, and if we get to it next meeting, we will, but that'll give us a chance. We won't vote on it, a final vote next meeting, but we'll have some language in front of us. For instance, how many people are on the probable cause panel, whether that's with a hard number or whether it's within the discretion of the chair, those kinds of things. So we'll have a starting point. All in favor of directing Julie to do so, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Number 2 is adopted. Number 3.
The third recommendation that Board Member Davis and I had was that we compile a list of potential advocates, and the function of said advocate would be to prosecute complaints after determination of probable cause.
I would recommend we approve that.
Okay, Mr. Friedman, would you like to amend that to include also something related to investigators, or is that a separate
I've
issue?
already identified a couple, so yes, it would be just fine, and if we could get out some sort of a
They'd be two
contractual.
separate,
Yeah,
they'd be two
contractual.
separate RFPs, but yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
well, I have two who said that they would agree to do it. One works for the Florida Bar Association, does their investigations, and I don't know where the other one's working right now.
okay, so we're going to bifurcate 3 into 3A related to advocates and 3B related to investigators, since those are 2 places that we might need to purchase services at some point. Ms. Meadows-Keefe.
And I would ask the board to allow me to consult with Mr. Friedman on the composition of the RFP, because I know I want to glean from his skill sets, and he's my investigator committee member, that he'll assist me in that RFP drafting.
I must warn you, I don't know a thing about RFPs, but I do know a little bit
The
about it.
skill sets that are required for
Sure.
investigators, I know you know that.
I think so.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I help with that RFP, the language?
Investigators or advocates?
Both.
Both.
As long as the 2 of you are not meeting outside the sunshine.
No problem.
Yes, I think if you work through Ms. Meadows-Keefe editing, but not collaborating with each
Right.
other.
I
that-
would sure
Editing.
appreciate any help I can get, thank you.
Right.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. That passes. I would note that, Mr. Friedman, we are still going to rely on you at some point for some help on a bylaw concerning how we would document our investigations and what would be necessary. I don't know whether that belongs in an RFP or probably more likely in a bylaw, since it would relate to our records that we would, I know you've talked before about the processes by which such records should be maintained.
Yeah, I think, I guess we're pressed for time now, but what I would just generally say is, obviously, the records, in one sense, we want to have it standardized for us in a particular format. In the other sense, we want to make sure the investigators know precisely what's expected of them in terms of what they need to write, sure.
Okay. I would announce that our next meeting is Tuesday, July 19th at, from 4 to 7, same bat time, same bat channel. And I would remind everyone that if you have not submitted your Form 1 financial disclosure, they are due. You should have done that already. If you haven't, you will be flogged promptly the last day of the month.
Except I'm an exception.
She's an exception.
Seriously.
That's true. Yes, I understand.
I would tell you, I looked mine up and found out but that both this year and last year were there.
Yes.
Very pleasantly surprised. Yeah.
You're going to start finding a
Site.
lot of that stuff online. I know a couple of years ago, somebody went through the ones that were online with the Ethics Commission and just kind of found things that that particular complainant didn't like in a wide variety of them and filed complaints, not with anybody in his jurisdiction or anybody he knew, but just people where he thought there might be problems. So I would encourage you to, be scrupulous in reporting your, making your financial disclosure. Does anyone have anything else? Do we need to give Julie any more work for next month?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do. In our discussion during the closed session and just review of what I don't mean this in a mean way, what we call an ethics code, I was particularly perturbed, or let's just say concerned, with the paucity of actual language and directives in there laying out what you shall and shall not do. It seems to me as the ethics code is more procedural in terms, it does establish an ethics board and an ethics officer and what those two, entities or offices do. However, it doesn't say, for example, that, the city shall not commit waste of public funds. It doesn't say, for example, that city employees and appointees shall not engage in activity that is, that gives rise to conflict of interest. All that is implied, I guess, but it doesn't state it. So the ethics code, I think, needs to be beefed up, and we actually need to put together an ethics code. So I don't know if we've just overlooked that, if that's an oversight on our part, or what happened there. But I think I was a little taken aback during our discussion and actually looking at the ethics code and say, wait a minute, there's nothing in here.
Mr. Chair?
Madam Ethics Officer.
We had talked about, I think when I had the presentation on the city ethics code, the need for the board, I know I've brought this up more than once, that the board needs to actually go through and determine for itself what additional provisions it wants included in the ethics code. Bring those to a meeting. We make those in the form of recommendations to the city commission for them to implement. So that is a job for the board to do.
How about this, Mr. Ochtayo and board
Yes.
members? How about if at the next meeting, we bring you back a short list of some ideas of ways we might approach it? Everything from, maybe some broad adoption of an ethics, some existing ethics statement that's adopted by reference to specific items that might be included in the city ordinance. We'll start a discussion at the next meeting and see then if we can't get enough direction from the board to come back with something very concrete at our August meeting. Because next meeting, we'll probably spend half our time on the pledge. So next meeting's pretty well jam up. Okay, for the pledge, if you have anything, Ms. Meadows-Keefe will send you the latest language from Mr. Poitevin. Since he has sent a revised version. He is working very hard to, I think, try to address concerns of board members that we've expressed publicly. I expect that I will have a variation on the theme that I will send to her that will be available at the next meeting, but will not be sent to you because that would be meeting outside the sunshine. If you have things that you want her to put in front of the board, whether they be specific elements to be included in in an ethics statement, an ethics pledge, or specific concerns that you have, whatever they might be that you want her to have on paper for us, please do so. I mean, if you've got 10 reasons that you think it's an idea that is not workable, put them down and we'll put them in front. Like I said, my intent is not to have a lot of public comment. We may do 5 or 10 minutes of public comment, but we're going to spend, just like the meeting we just came out of, I would like the board members to just kind of nosh through among ourselves what our concerns and feelings and beliefs and preferences are. Ms. Phillips.
I just wanted to let everyone know for planning purposes that I will not be at the August meeting.
Okay, we'll try to schedule some really important, critical things for then. Mr. Davis.
Documents that need editing.
Right.
Mr. Davis.
Just quickly going back to ideas for the ethics code, the ethics statutory provisions that the Commission on Ethics considered that we have reviewed today.
112.
It seems to me, if that type basic fundamental ethics code is not within our code, it would be an excellent idea to have it because it covers everything so clearly. It has judicial decisions interpreting it and giving guidance. It defines words, what they mean, and it would give us that one provision. If we had implemented it, would give great guidance and help to us, it seems to me.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I mean when I say I look at ours and see the paucity and it not actually defining and laying out terms and laying out what violations are. It's very, very, there's clearly a lacuna in there. But I don't know if we're able to adopt by reference, some things. Maybe instead of just reinventing the wheel, we just adopt by reference some provisions. But I just wanted to put that out. I don't know if anybody else felt that way, but I just wanted to put that out there.
It goes to the nature, I think, of our jurisdiction. I think one thing we might do is, Julie and I will have for you a list of the specific items in the state ethics code, because it may be that we don't feel any compelling need that we need to have jurisdiction over all of them, but there may be some of them that are more compelling than others. Misuse of position, obviously, I think accounts about 80% of the complaints that the State Commission gets involve misuse of position. I would think that would be a critical one for us. There may be others where we say we could take a pass because maybe if we just got misuse of position within our jurisdiction, that gets us where we need to get. I don't know. It's just a matter of how much, because it'll have to be our recommendation to the City Commission, so we have to be aware that they will have to put their stamp of approval on it. Mr. Currington.
I think just by way of perspective, I guess I would add, I think the reason or part of the reason for the void was, I know when I was first interviewed by the board, there were discussions, and I think there was an assumption by many that there was concurrent jurisdiction, that you had the authority to enforce Chapter 112, Part 3. And subsequently, I wrote an opinion based on the charter amendment that talked about enforcement of this ethics code. So that created the void, I think.
It's your fault.
The other thing to think about is there are probably a number of what are essentially ethics provisions in various, not city ordinances, but city policies, that because they're not in the city ethics code, we can't enforce, and yet they clearly are things that the city expects of its employees, and that might be another opportunity for us to do something where the city could say, the City Commission could say, we've already blessed that as a mandate for our employees and officers without having to ask them to do something that's too heavy a political lift for them.
Yeah.
If no one has anything else, we are adjourned. I will see you next month.